Well, good morning. Will you remain standing? It's always the front row people. You think you control the whole service, don't you? Remain standing for the reading of the gospel. Hear these words from Luke chapter 12, verses 13 through 21. Someone from the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus said to him, "Man, who appointed me as judge or referee between you and your brother?" Then Jesus said to them, "Watch out. Guard yourself against all kinds of greed. After all, one's life isn't determined by one's possessions, even when someone is very wealthy." Then he told them a parable. A certain rich man's land produced a bountiful crop. He said to himself, "What will I do? I have no place to store my harvest." Then he thought, "Here's what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build up bigger ones. That's where I'll store all my grain and goods. I'll say to myself, 'You have stored up plenty of goods, enough for several years. Take it easy. Eat, drink, and enjoy yourself.' But God said to him, 'Fool, tonight you will die. Now who will get the things you have prepared for yourself? This is the way it will be for those who hoard things for themselves and aren't rich toward God.'" This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. It's been a long time since I have preached two services. I began my Methodist vocation back in 2007, 2008. I moved from the Church of the Nazarene, which is a sister denomination. But I moved and went to Powell Church, and Powell had multiple services, and the pastor at the time was G.W. Bowles, and he and I would go around and preach in different services, and I found out something, that my first sermon and my second sermon are often different. And I asked myself why one day, and I realized that my first sermon, I tend to bore myself. So you're getting the better sermon of the two. So if this one's not good, imagine what the first one was like. The passage we're reading today is the parable of the rich fool. And as I thought about this, especially after this morning, I started thinking, you all don't need to hear this sermon. You're part of the church. There's no greed here. We know what it's like to give of ourselves. We know what it's like to supply for those in need. There's no reason we would have to hear a sermon about greed. There's never been a single one of us that has ever gone to Target or Walmart and seen those plastic containers, and they happen to be on sale. Instead of $5.99, they're $5, and we think, "Oh, what a deal that is. I'm going to get that because one day I will use that to put all my old junk in it so I can buy new junk." Be on guard. Watch out. Guard yourself against all kinds of greed. There's never been a time that anyone in this room has saw someone get something, an award or perhaps a promotion or a raise, or they won an accolade at school, and thought to yourself, "That should have been me. I should have gotten that. I don't know why they're getting it." And it's hard to celebrate with them because we're focused on what we should have received. There's no one in here that's ever had those thoughts, right? Watch out. Guard yourself against all kinds of greed. And I know no one has ever moved their grammar to the I language. I want this. I need that. God, will you help me with this? Or will you make sure that I am able to do this or that? I. We don't do that at church, do we? Watch out. Guard yourself against all kinds of greed. And I certainly know no one in here has ever bought anything on an impulse. You've never bought anything because you were kind of feeling sad. You never bought anything because you thought, that will make me look better. You've never watched one of those infomercials that everyone rolls their eyes at, the as seen on TV. You've never picked up the phone and dialed that 1-800 number to receive those potato gloves that peel the potatoes, but they don't really work. Watch out. Be on guard against all kinds of greed. If this sounds familiar to you, it may not be you, but maybe you've been spying on me, because these are things that I tend to do. My guess is really that we've all been a part of some of this. And when we have, we can begin to recognize, whether we want to admit it or not, that maybe even though we are church people, maybe there is a part of us that can sometimes be greedy. And in the midst of that, maybe, just maybe, instead of reading our scripture and sometimes judging the people that Jesus is talking to, thinking, yeah, you're right, Jesus, you get on to them, or thinking, yeah, Jesus, I wish that you would come here and say that to my neighbor or my spouse. Not my spouse. She's sitting back there, and if I was talking about her, I would be in big time trouble. But maybe, instead of relating that way, maybe you can see yourself as the barn builder and understand what it's like to say, how do I prepare for this? I was talking to a colleague last week, and a good friend of mine, his name is Timothy Hankins. Some of you know Timothy, especially if you were part of the, somebody tell me where he was at. I talked to somebody today. He was just speaking somewhere. Mission U, right? Those are the most blank stares I have ever received in my entire life. Anyway, you don't know Timothy Hankins, and why should you? Because I was talking to him the other day, and he was telling me about a time that he went away to McKinley, Texas, and he had done kind of the same thing that Pastor Laura is doing. It was a spiritual retreat, and he had left and was going to spend some time with one of his mentors that growing up as he started his journey in ministry was one of the guys that really helped him in his spiritual development. And he was very excited about going and spending the weekend, and he flew and had a vehicle in McKinley for some reason, had a vehicle there and was going to drive it back across. And his wife was coming a few days later to help drive back across the country. And he got there and they were having a great time. And this mentor of Timothy's told him, I've got a surprise for you. I've got a bunch of books that I would like to give you because I don't need them anymore, but I think they could be very helpful for you as you're starting or continuing this ministry journey. And Timothy is an avid reader, very, very theological, one of the smartest guys I have ever met. And so he was extremely excited. Well, a few days later, his wife Kristen flew in and got there, and she had no more gotten to the house. And Timothy said, I've got something I got to show you. This is just the greatest. And he walks out into the garage, and there, set with his name on it, 12 large boxes of books. 12 large boxes of books. Timothy was ecstatic. Kristen was something other than ecstatic. And she said, what are you going to do with these? Where are you going to put these? And he said, I've been thinking about that. There's some places in the parsonage I can build some new shelves. I was thinking about getting a couple more bookshelves for the office, and by then I can start to place these books where I need to. And she said, well, there is another option. And he said, no, I am not getting rid of my old books. Watch out. Be on guard. Guard yourself against all kinds of greed. And Jesus warns us that there are all kinds of greed. It may be books, shoes, or really any tangible thing. It may be amassing money or land or wealth. But greed can also be about time or attention. It can be about approval or knowledge or love or power or control or needing to be right or being in charge or 1,000 other things. But ultimately, though, if we really think about it and if we begin to digest this parable, greed is not about those things that I mentioned. Those are just symptoms or that point to a deeper issue. And the issue is not about quantity, but it's about a condition of the heart. Greed is really just a way of dealing with our own feelings of deceit and emptiness. It's not so much about having enough, but it's about being enough. When we believe ourselves to be deficient, when we lose our belief in ourselves, when we feel we are not enough, oftentimes that's when we get greedy. We use things and people to fill the hole inside us. Greed deceives and convinces us that if we just have more blank, then we'll be blank. If we just have more money, then I'll have a more secure future. If I just get more books, then I'll have more knowledge and answers, and people will see me as studious and intelligent. If I can get more of your time and attention, then I'll feel accepted, important, and relevant. If I can gain more power and control, then I'll be safe and respected. Then no one can hurt me. See, greed uses these external things with internal matters, and it rarely works. It leaves us wanting more, always seeking the next dollar or the next book or the next word of approval. But the thing that happens the most is greed steals and deprives of what we most want. Greed thieves us of our own lives. Now, all this isn't to say that possessions are necessarily a bad thing or inherently wrong. And the antidote to greed is not necessarily cleaning out our closets, although that may be a good place to start. The real work is the interior work of the heart. Greed shows me, greed uncovers me to be living in poverty toward God. So the antidote to greed then is what Jesus says at the end of the parable. And that's we must be rich toward God. That means we must invest in ourselves and in other and the world in the same ways in which Jesus invested himself. Through love, mercy, compassion, justice, hope, courage, acceptance, truth, beauty, generosity. This is the wealth of God. This is the life God shares and invests in us through Jesus Christ. So to be rich toward God begins with knowing that we are already God's beloved treasure. There's a freedom in that. It's the freedom to live rich toward others in the world. It reveals that there is enough. It declares my life to be as important and as valuable as yours or anyone else's. It eliminates the need for comparison with judgment of myself or judgment of others. Our being takes precedence over having. I can't help but wonder if greed isn't the cause of our current political, social, cultural acidity and the vile words that we spew at one another. I can't help but wonder if greed is not what's the root cause of all the violence in today's world and the dysfunction and the hurts in and of our relationships. To the degree greed is present, it thieves us of God's wealth. The boxes, shelves, and closets of our lives seem to already be full. We have no need, no desire, or maybe we just have no room for God. It isolates us from self and others and from God. Greed works its deception and turns us back on ourselves. And that grammar of life soon becomes that first person singular we talked about. It sounds like this. I know what I'll do. I will pull down my barns. I will build larger barns. I will store my stuff in new barns. I will relax. I will eat. I will drink. I will be merry. When that happens, greed has thieved me of you and the possibility of us. There's no room for a second or third person. There's only me. A fool, Jesus says. A fool who closes the barn door after the thief has escaped with my life. Life does not consist of abundance and possessions, Jesus says. Somewhere deep within, we really already know this. It's not a new concept. And here's why I say that. I want you to think about the first time you held your child, or a grandchild, or a cousin, or a niece, or a nephew, or that friend that just had a newborn baby. Think about looking them in the eye and perhaps even bending down to kiss them on the forehead or to whisper in their ear. Think about the last time you saw a child baptized. Think about those children that you've spoken to this week or last week or coming up that have entered back into school. Now think about the things that you've said to them. Did you hold that newborn baby in your arms and kiss it on the head and whisper in its ear, when you grow up, I hope you have the most shoes in the world. I hope that you have the biggest house. I hope that you make the most money. I hope that you get fat because you eat all that you want, that you drink all that you want. I hope that you have every book in the world. Is that what you tell them? Or do you say, I hope that you grow up in a world that's filled with peace. I hope that you grow up and come to realize that the life that Jesus lived for us was an example for us, for the way that we should live, the way that we should love others, the way that we should share our life with those that we love. Do you say to them, I hope that you are healthy? Those are the things we say, right? And I really believe the reason we say that is because deep down inside, that's exactly what we want for ourselves. To live in a world of peace, to really be there for those that are suffering, to share what we have with others so that they too can be treated equally as we are. The reason those things are your prayers and your hopes and wishes is because that's what we want. We understand that when we have those things, we are entering into the richness of God. We catch a glimpse of the treasure that we are and want to be, because the treasure God knows is who we already are. What would happen if we lived that way? What would be different in our life? Instead of just wishing that on the inside and wishing that for other people, what if we began to live in a way that kept us away from greed and allowed us to focus on those that were in need? What if we lived in a way that when we woke up, we just said, Jesus, today I want to walk like you. I want to talk like you. I want to love like you. What would happen if we became intentional? I wonder if we could begin to understand that our life would probably be different. And there would be possibilities that could create relationships that we may not know. What is it that we might need to do to claim ourselves as God's treasure and to be rich toward God. Could it really be as simple as watch out and guard ourselves against all kinds of greed? Jesus, being fully man and fully divine, could have overthrown the Jewish and the Roman rule. He could have had it all. But instead, he gathered in an upper room with his disciples, and he shared bread and wine. And he told them he was giving up everything, including his life, so that they and others, including you and me, could live. This was the ultimate richness toward God. In just a moment, as we gather around the table, may we remember this sacrifice and how Jesus turned from greed, and may we do the same. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.